Hi, this is Russ with Devoted Golfer TV. I have a club fitting business here in North Dallas called Fit2Score. I'm here today with Ridge Meracle from Mizuno, and we're going to be talking about JPX. What are they called?
The new JPX 923 irons.
It's called the 923, so that means 23.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first set of JPXs, like 20. It didn't have the 9 in front of it. It was like
didn't.
A 21 or 22 or something like that.
Absolutely.
So I've been playing Mizuno for a very, very long time.
Sure.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk today about the changes from the JPX 2021. It would be called the 921.
Correct.
And today we're talking about the 923s.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, so what I did is I went through Mizuno's internal slide presentation and put some of it here, but not all of it, and Ridge is going to fill in the details.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's go after it. There we go, 923 hot metal. So let's look at our first point. What does this mean?
Nickel chromoly. So if you follow the Mizuno world over the last, since the 900 series, we have been using a metal called chromoly. Mm-hmm. And what chromoly is, it is a metal that we have been using that's very malleable in a one-piece cast. But from the 4140 that we're using before, we have now maxed out how thin we could make that face.
Okay.
So switching to this nickel chromoly gave us the ability to go thinner. This isn't a new metal. It's just a newer metal to the golf industry. If you're familiar at all with military aircraft or commercial aircraft, it's used a lot in landing gears. It's a very malleable material. It's a very dense material. And it gave us the ability to actually go 8% thinner on our club face than the previous lines before that.
So I want to go back to an earlier spot in this conversation. You said more malleable. How much can I bend them?
I'm very comfortable bending those 2 degrees.
So you're saying 2 degrees, where with the forge we were looking at 4 degrees.
Correct. And usually cast is a little bit more, it's a little firmer, just the practice and how it cools.
A little?
It is. But I'll tell you what.
I got to load up on the bending bars.
We've gotten a lot better, I think, and that's not just Mizuno. That's as an industry. We have made our cast materials softer. The materials that companies are using now are softer, so we are able to get wiggle room. I mean, you remember bending clubs 15 years ago. You were lucky to get one.
Yeah.
And if you did get,
and some of them you'd have to send back to the manufacturer. You couldn't bend them.
No. I remember there was one set of clubs out there that you'd bend it 2 degrees, leave it for an hour, and then come back to 1 up. So you just had to keep fighting it. Yeah. So we have gotten a lot better as an industry at finding materials that are malleable so that we can fit that club to you.
And that's where we get into these exotic materials.
Absolutely.
So we've got a new metal, and that metal has allowed you to go thinner, and that results in
a core
the word you
increase.
used earlier, core area. You want to explain that again?
Yeah, COR is the maximum number of the trampoline effect essentially on the golf club on the center impact. We've all maxed out what we can get from a COR perspective in irons and in drivers. That's why when people say, oh, we've increased the ball speed. How? Because you can't increase COR. But the new name of the game is how do I increase my COR and max it out throughout the entire face? And that's the name of the game now. So we're trying to find ways to get more ball speed on a miss hit to where it's more consistent throughout the entire face.
So when I see somebody and I'm looking at his impact marks and they're all over here, hot metal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So 16% is a huge number in the R&D world. To increase something that much in one model generation is a massive number. And I don't want to understate that, because when people think of 16%, they're like, well, that's not a big number. But in the R&D world and in the golf club industry, that is a massive number.
In any metal manufacturing world,
absolutely,
16% is a big number.
It's huge. So for us to be able to say, hey, that we've increased our core area in that amount while also thinning out the face, give us more ball speed, but also maintaining the sound and feel that we're looking for in a golf club, tip of the cap to the R&D department, because that is very, very hard to do.
Okay. Hot Metal Pro. This is my favorite hot metal.
This has been one that's just really, really taken off. We announced this at the it was a couple years ago at the PGA show. I don't want to say the wrong date, but it took off. People were looking for something like the hot metal that just had a little bit less offset to it.
Yeah.
There's plenty of golfers out there who played maybe in college, played in high school, who don't have the time to practice as much as they'd like.
Right.
But they don't want to look at something with a lot of offset. Because like you were saying earlier, if you have offset, your timing can be thrown off if you're used to having a certain amount.
Right.
So bringing in this Hot Metal Pro that has that amount of forgiveness, just like the Hot Metal, in a little bit smaller package with a little less offset.
And, okay, so there it is, a little less offset.
Yeah.
And, you know, these are the things I like, the thinner top line, but more important than that for me is the narrower sole.
Absolutely. And we said it earlier, because where we live in Texas, that narrow sole helps us just cut through that turf a little bit more.
Yeah. What would you call it? That Bermuda grind. Yeah, I love that word. Yeah.
It's a great way it's a good way to see the imagery of it, because if you've ever played Bermuda grass, it is a nightmare sometimes if you're getting out of the rough all day.
Yeah. So is there a Hot Metal Pro head there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, this is where I fall in love with this. It's just a thinner sole.
Just slightly.
Right. And then, you know, then this is significantly cambered, so you really don't have as much turf drag as you would think because of how this is cambered off in the back.
And if you look at the way that we've done the finish on it, we did, and you'll see on the top line too, we go from satin to that mirror finish. What that does is it gives us the illusion of that club is even smaller. If you're a 30 handicap or if you're a +3 handicap, you don't want to look down at something that's large. You don't want to see the sole at the bottom of the club.
Yeah.
So for us to be able to make all that just fall off the back of the club really makes it look even more compact than it really is.
Okay. Yeah. Love this club. You know, when the Pro version came out, I wasn't really fond of this just because of the width of it.
Sure.
But, you know, as when this came out, this is...
It just shows you that we listen.
Yeah.
We listen to what people are saying, and we listen to what people want. So for us to be able to add something else into the line, and then you'll see when we bring this next one into the mix, this HL, you'll see that we were listening and kind of noticing trends in the marketplace.
Yeah. I'm going to take a look at that here in a minute. So the 923 wedge is designed for the hot metals?
Yes.
It's a match to the hot metals.
Yes, it is.
So what are we talking about here? Different material here?
It's going to be an X30 stainless steel. It's something that we've been using over the past few years in our JPX world. Just gives us that really soft feel that you're looking for. But also, being an X30 stainless, we were able to maximize the perimeter weighting on this club to where we can get it to be more consistent and actually match up to the Hot Metals and Hot Metal Pros a little bit more than what we'd say maybe a T22 would.
Okay. So a T22 has a little bit of boron in the face.
It does.
Yeah.
It
so
does.
the grooves last a little longer.
Correct. And the main reason for that.
And so here we're going to see the same thing. We're going to see longer lasting grooves.
Yes, and it's because of the way that they're designed. The T22 is a forged wedge. And we talked about it earlier. Forged is a softer metal. And because it's softer, the grooves do wear out a little quicker. So adding that boron increased the durability by 30%. With this being an X30 stainless steel, it doesn't wear out as much because it is a little bit stronger of a metal. So we don't have to worry about adding the boron into there because it's going to be more consistent and it's going to last longer on its own.
So as an aside, E21, gone, right?
Say again?
E21 wedge.
The ES2 one?
ES21.
I have something coming. Stay tuned. That's going to replace that.
Okay. Because one of my teaching friends said, hey, have you worked with this thing? Mm-hmm. He said, I love it.
Let's just say the ES21 was a proof of concept.
Yeah.
We have something up our sleeves that's going to be coming out. Stay tuned. We'll do something on the video about it, but you're going to like what you see. Let's just say that.
Yeah. So we've got a milled face.
Yes.
Right? And lofts gapped for the JPX.
Makes it a lot easier just to tell the fitter, I want a gap, sand, and lob. Makes it to where we can mix and match them and put them in there versus us having to figure out, well, the pitching wedge here is a 44, then we need to go to 52, or do you want a 6-degree gap, you want a 5-degree gap? Being able to go gap, sand, lob just gives us the ability to get more consistent and keep the set as consistent as possible.
So can I bend this?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So we're looking at 2 degrees.
I would say 2 degrees.
Okay. and oft specific grooves. We haven't talked about grooves. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a big thing.
It's a big thing. Mizuno is one of the very first people to bring that technology to the market. Grooves, you need a different groove for the different swings that you do. For example, a 50-degree wedge, more than likely than not, you're going to swing that one more full, do more full swing shots than a 56-degree wedge, for example. So those are going to require different grooves. So for us, we've been able to add the loft-specific grooves. We also have loft-specific grinds, loft-specific center of gravities. Bringing the loft-specific grooves to this model gives us just more consistency when we need it around the greens or if we're going to attack a pin.
So price-wise, and we haven't brought this up before, but so the JPX 923 wedge versus the MP.
Sure. It's going to be the same price as the JPX models. So if you wanted to add the JPX sand wedge to your 4-through gap hot metal, that sand wedge is going to match the price of your JPX 923 hot metals.
Yeah. Okay. So you're learning to say that word.
It's a new one for me too.
Yeah.
It's always a new one. You've been saying 921 for a couple years, so it's going to take me some time to get back into the threes.
Okay. This is interesting. This is a completely new concept.
This is a completely
new concept.
Brand new concept. So we started looking at the data that the shaft optimizer sends out to us. So if you've ever hit one of the Mizuno shaft optimizers, all that raw data is actually sent to Mizuno. And we don't know your name or anything like that, but we do get an idea of what the swing is. And we found out that 24% of golfers swing under 70 miles an hour. And almost 50% of golfers could benefit from more increased loft. So we notice, as clubs have gotten stronger and stronger, for example, we're at 28.5 degrees on the 7-iron of the hot metal. A lot of golfers at 70 miles an hour cannot get enough club head speed to get the right launch to get that ball up in the air and hold it.
And if you don't have the right launch, you don't have the right angle of descent.
Nope.
And if you don't have the right angle of descent, even if you do hit the green, you're going to roll it off the back.
We're just playing croquet out there.
Yeah.
We want that ball to stop. And one of the biggest things as fitters that we try to do is how do we find ways to make it toward that descent angle and the way the ball is going into the green has the optimal ability to stop.
So let's talk about optimal descent angle.
Sure.
Yeah. Where do you see it?
With a 7-iron, I like to keep it around 45. That's my golden number. But it varies person to person. The best way to explain it is sort of an algebra equation. I can be a 43-degree descent angle, but my spin rate could be higher than average, so it's going to balance out. And vice versa. I could be a lower or a higher trajectory, say 47, with less spin. As long as we have the optimal spin and the optimal descent angle, which again for me is right around that 45, we're going to actually hold greens. And that's the difference in, let's say you landed the ball 10 feet from the hole and it rolled 3 yards. So now we got 19-foot putt versus lands 10 yards, 10 feet, rolls 15 yards. Now we have a 55-foot putt.
If you're not chipping from off the back of the green.
And if you're lucky, that holds on the green. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do now as golf manufacturers and OEMs, trying to find ways to get the average golfer to hold greens. I said this to you earlier. I like to play darts with my irons. I want to point and shoot. Not croquet. I don't want that ball rolling all over the green.
Yeah. And the earlier discussion was about a quote from Freddie Couples years ago. If you need more distance, what do?
Grab another club.
You got it. You got 14 of them in the bag.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. There is a pitching wedge on the market now that's at 38 degrees. That's my 8-iron.
Yeah.
It's crazy how strong these lofts have gotten. And if you're not swinging hard enough, you're not going to get the ball in the air to hold it green. So the hot metal,
if you can even get it in the air.
If you can get it in the air. This is something where a lot of people probably watching this, you've heard this. I'm sure you've heard this. I've heard it plenty of times. My 5 and 6-iron go the same distance. Why? It's a loft
because you
issue.
don't have the speed.
Exactly. So bringing this model in here is going to benefit a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so the HL is 3 degrees weaker. So it's actually at 31 degrees. It's actually 3.5 degrees weaker. So that we're able to get the ball in the air and land soft. You might lose a yard. You might lose a yard or two on your total distance. But is that something that's an easy trade-off? Exactly. That's a great trade-off for me versus me rolling off 10 yards versus me actually rolling backwards maybe a yard.
When I'm fitting, I hold up an iron and I say to people, what's your objective when you have an iron in your hand? And I don't get I never get the answer I'm looking for. And the answer I'm looking for is a short putt.
That's all it is.
That's all it is. And if you need more distance and you think you're going to get the distance by swinging harder, so, I mean, you get some exposure to tour. The tour guys, what do they think is the percentage of their strength or their ability that they should be deploying when they're swinging an iron?
Oh, I mean, if you talk to a tour player, they're only swinging 80 to 85% because that's the most controllable and the most that they can. It's all about repetition.
Yeah.
It's all about what's the one swing that I can repeat for 18 holes.
So they're not over-torquing their bodies. They're not throwing their arms off the top and trying to hit the thing as hard as they can. They just get another club.
And that's where a lot of new golfers and amateur golfers do struggle, is because they try to swing out of their shoes, trying to get that extra distance, where golf is already a hard enough game. So for you trying to change your swing to pull something off, you're just making it even harder. There's nothing.
What I tell people is the only change you can make is to swing easier. You cannot make that 7-iron go any further and expect to be on the green.
No.
It is not going to happen. If you're looking at that 7-iron distance and you're thinking that pin's 5 yards further than I can hit this, get the 6-iron out.
Get the 6-iron and just and that's where you look and see, is it smart to land short or smart to land long?
Yeah.
It's okay to be short of a green sometimes, as long as you're
I'd
dancing.
rather be short of a green, especially if it's pitched at me, than it would be over the green.
Absolutely.
And try to chip to a downhill spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that we've been focusing on. Like I said to you earlier, we listen, we pay attention to what the trends are and what people are needing. And bringing in a higher launch club is something that a lot of people are needing.
Yeah. So we've still got these other characteristics that we talked about before, but we've got a lower, deeper center of gravity.
Absolutely.
Is there a high launch laying there?
There is right here.
You've got one.
So if you'll notice, there's going to be a slightly bit more offset to it. It's going to have a thicker sole.
Yeah,
But
gotcha.
again, just trying to get that CG deeper into the club so that we can get that ball flied up.
Yeah.
The deeper the CG, the higher the launch of the golf club.
Yeah. And the way that you do that is to push the weight down and push the weight back.
Absolutely.
And so this is what happens with the design when you go after that.
Correct.
But if you're only swinging, if you can't swing a single iron in your bag at 90 miles an hour, this is where you need to live.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, a quarter of the golfing world swings under 70 miles an hour. I want to say, do you know off the top of your head the average LPGA swing?
No, I don't. No.
That would be, because I always tell people when you're looking at your game and the average golfer needs to look at club head speed and distances, look at the LPGA players. They swing a lot harder than people think they do, and it's probably a lot more aligned to what the amateur golfer is going to do versus, let's say, Bryson, for example, or Justin Thomas, who they love to swing out of their shoes.
Yeah. And higher lofts, which we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
So the lofts are higher. So people, some people don't understand the concept that swing speed relates to ball speed, and the longer the ball stays in the air, the higher it goes.
Exactly.
But if you don't have the speed to get out to here, if you can't hit that apex, your apex is here, and you're on the way down without having achieved that. So,
Absolutely.
So when we look at lofts, we have to think, how fast am I swinging? Am I getting the height that I need to get that 45-degree angle of descent?
And I want to point out, too, there's nothing wrong with swinging 74, 75 miles an hour. The problem was always we didn't have the club in the market to make their game better. And that's just adding this club gives them the ability to now we can fit and customize a set for them to make their game better.
Yeah.
Because that's a big misconception. People always look for club head speed. I mean, that's the big new thing is to find 5 more yards.
Yeah. So we have a variation now that goes along with the hot metal line. You added what to me looks like a hybrid.
It's not a hybrid. And that's one thing I want to make clear. It's a direct long iron replacement, which sounds like a hybrid, but usually hybrids don't spin as much. They don't get as high up in the air. Where a JPX Fly High is designed to go the same distance that a 5-iron would, but just with a higher trajectory and spin.
5-iron should.
Correct.
Right? So can we get a little hotter face in this?
You could. We don't want to make it hotter because we want it to be as consistent as possible.
Because now we have a gapping issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we want that to fly the same gapping that the 5 to the 6 would, or the 4 to the 5 would.
Yeah.
So we use a little bit differences in center of gravities, length of the club head, or not the club head, the shaft, to get that height that we're looking for. Because again, like I said earlier, we're playing darts out there. I want that ball to stop.
Yeah.
And if I need to get to a club that's a little wider with a little deeper center of gravity to do it, why not?
So it's a little bit longer toe to heel?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so, as you get into longer, you get into flatter, and when you get into flatter, the dispersion pattern goes toe heel.
Absolutely.
Right? And so here we have a club designed for more toe heel dispersion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's like an automatic. You just order the whole set like that.
And what's really cool is that club is the same price as the rest of the set.
Yeah.
So there's no difference in price because you have to play a fly high versus a hot metal 5-iron.
So I'm trying to remember here. Lefties?
There's not a lefty in the fly high, but there is a lefty in the hot metal and hot metal pro. There's no lefty right now in the HLs.
In this one here.
Correct.
Yeah, so, okay. So we got that part straightened
Yeah.
out. Okay, so I think that we are at the end here, aren't we? Yep.
I think so.
So, new drivers this year?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So I'm looking for a new wedge. I'm looking for a new driver, new putters.
I don't know. That one I will say I don't know.
Yeah.
There are some
Okay.
secrets that they like to keep from us. And just like anybody, I like to learn things the same time y'all do. I don't want to. It spoils all the fun when you know everything in advance. But I've honestly told you everything that I know today.
Okay. Well, Rich, thanks once again.
Absolutely, Russ. It's always a pleasure.
We'll see you when those drivers show up.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for spending your time with us. I know that we get a little bit long-winded here. That's why we're here. As golf club builders and fitters, we need to understand the golf shafts we work with. The most comprehensive source for this knowledge is Golf Shaft Reviews. For a small annual fee, you'll have access to shaft stiffness, torque, weight, and balance data. And, most important, the EI bend profiles, the same bend profiles that are used by golf shaft engineers when they design and manufacture golf shafts. The measurements from my lab let you compare any shaft to any other shaft using the same measurement protocol. Golf Shaft Reviews also offers professional subscriptions that provide more detailed shaft data. If you want to understand golf shafts from the detailed perspective of a golf shaft engineer, take a look at Golf Shaft Reviews.